Okay, so now I'm starting to work on the face uh, in a much more refined stage. Begin to place my brightest highlights on the gums and his jaw that has a very sort of interesting wedge-shaped texture to it. It's very crackly and it's got some unusual lines. But highlight up the gums and push these lights super far. And we'll do the same process that we did before, where we basically over highlight it and then glaze it back down. Now, this is a pretty long video, so I've sped up the footage a lot. If you guys find that this is too fast, please let me know. I'm happy to slow it down. Or if, only certain parts are interesting, feel free to also let me know. But I wanted to show you the entire process of painting the model. So I am including it in its entirety sped up. Here the light is very focused on the front of the forehead. I'm now adding some of the light to the wrinkles on the top that face forward, parts of the eyebrows. So lots of light on the snout, and as we move further back up the neck, there'll be a lot less light. Right. Missed this part before while painting it, so just quickly getting a sketch and bit of base coat on the upper lip, I guess you could call it, and some of the areas around where the skin meets his horns. So, painting a bit of the upper gums using the more red, and I'm going to slowly add a bit of the skin tone. Here I didn't use as much of the orange because it's a bit more in shadow, so I don't want as much of that pure orange color that would be on top of his head on this kind of overhung area. But it is a very important part of the model, so I do want it to be well defined. So here I'm mixing another glaze where the jaw over highlighted. So we can pull some more red and pull even more of the focus as I move around to the sides. I glaze it back, and then re-highlight the front of the model to just pull even more light towards the center. Again, you see here the brushstrokes are much smaller and much more controlled as I get towards the end of the step, even doing things like small dots to enhance areas of the wrinkles to the highest value. Just the small bits of highlight on the gums. Here you can see that kind of dotted texture I was talking about. Make the skin feel less mechanical by doing dots. It's a bit broken up. So here I'm grabbing some of the scarlet red to line around a bit of the areas, just a bit of the wrinkles, just like I did on the bicep and shoulder. The dark lining will create even more contrast in these areas and help sell that texture even further. Sorry for going off camera in a few areas. The model is very cumbersome to paint, and oftentimes didn't notice that I was off camera, but included it because it's, quickly get back on screen. So I filled in the nostrils and adding again just some final highlights back to areas that I wanted just a bit more definition. Here I'm highlighting some of the veins on the arm. Here I'm going to use some longer brush strokes to paint these areas. We can vary up the length of our brush strokes to make a more interesting texture. Another type of contrast, right, between long and short brush strokes creates a interesting texture contrast. So here I'm mixing up a bit of the English uniform and the US olive, and covering some of the shadow area of the back side of the neck. Going to essentially do what we did on the front shoulder with these tones to begin to add some definition and blend these areas. Refining these together using our previous mixtures, and we'll start to get some of this texture in here. Pushing the light even more. See, this is a very push and pull process where I'm adding shadow back in where it needs it, and adding light back in where it needs to be, and then constantly grabbing intermediate tones. Here I'm doing some wet blending on the areas I just did, adding more light to the neck, and then going a bit darker as I get closer to the underside of the jaw. Right, so using some of the blue, enhancing the shadows of the legs even more. Can pull that very dark blue back into the leg and bridge the gap between the very dark black kind of purple of the shadow areas. Alright, so here I've created kind of a wash, somewhere between a glaze and a wash. I actually want that intermediate tone to flow into those recesses. Okay, so doing the same thing I did on the back side of the neck. Here I want to just pull out some of these volumes a little more. Just add a bit more definition and interest to the back side of the model. And quickly I will define some of these ridges and wrinkles on the tail and on the back leg. Sketching an area of a small area of light on the tail on the back side. And here I begin to base coat the underside of the tail to bridge those areas. I can see this is where I've been holding it because I've been holding it with my bare hands. Some of the primer has started to rub off, and I'm not going to worry about it. And using this very large flat brush, grabbing a lot of paint. As you see, I refilled my palette there. I'm just going to cover right over it. Once this model is based and in use, those are not areas that would see a lot of handling. Oh, just like we did with the stomach, just grabbing intermediate and sketching in the overall lighting condition. This is a very dark area, so we won't get up to our pure pale green gray, but we'll mix more and more. I'm also using much less of the English uniform here because I don't want it to be as yellow as the front side of the model. So I'm mixing the US Olive Drab straight with the pale green gray or light green gray to just keep it more of a cooler group off white. Okay, now here I'm just cleaning up some areas that got run. All right, so this is the really interesting part. So here I have taken Vallejo Game Color Scarlet Blood, and I have thinned it down a lot in the airbrush. I'd say it's like a 70 to 80% or more water to paint. You can see as I spray it on the cardboard in the background. And I'm now going over the entire model with essentially what is like an airbrush glaze to restore the very saturated red feeling to the model. This will also clean up some of our blends for us. And yeah, there you can see it's super watered down. So this will essentially blend some for us and really enhance and make that red just super punchy. Covering everything, but also focusing more on the sides and a bit of the shadows. So effectively we're trying to bridge the shadows and midtones with the red through the airbrush. Where you could do it, so I'll do like a short burst of spray, then dry it with just air through the airbrush, do another spray, and do more layers of small spritzes, right, where I need it to enhance the color further and further. So there you can see it. I wet it, I dry it, I wet it. And yeah, that's how I've restored the red color to the figure. Yeah, and you can see how much more red feeling the overall skin is than it was before, yet we still have our very bright highlights and very deep shadows. Alright, and now I'm going back in and just in very small areas where Some of my extreme highlights got a little darker than I wanted them. I'm just going to quickly restore them in just very small areas. I've also started holding the model with like a plastic bag. Not right here, but I will soon, to try and not rub off as much of the paint as I was before. But, yep, here restoring some of the texture. Mostly, again, focusing on the areas of extreme highlight. I'm not as interested in some of the lower areas of the forearm and such. I more just want the front of the face, top of the shoulder, just the extreme brightest areas. Almost as if you could imagine he's like kind of slightly wet, or has very shiny skin. So it'd be the like ultra brightest reflections. Here you can see him. And at this point, I've added a little bit of dark sand to the palette and mixing that in to get a slightly warmer color than what just the light green gray plus English uniform would give me. And also somewhere of an intermediate tone between that and the elf skin tone to clean up these highlights on the white flesh where the red spray the red glaze from the airbrush has gotten onto the white skin. So I want to make that line between those two very sharp and well defined again.